I'm Hugh Hewitt. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt has been away for a couple of days. She's back tomorrow. One of the things I get to indulge in when I'm a bachelor is I turn on a book on tape and I fall asleep. And usually I wake up in the middle of the night and turn it off, but I didn't. So this morning I woke about 5 o'clock in the morning, and N.T. Wright, noted theologian, if you don't know who Tom Wright is, Bishop Tom Wright, is, along with Ratzinger, I think the two greatest theologians of the last century. And Tom Wright was talking about the martyrdom of Stephen in Acts. And as I listened to it, I thought, I got to share this. So I posted this morning, and forgive me for reading from myself. There will be tens of thousands of friends of Charlie Kirk gathering in Phoenix this weekend, many in shock still, and many in deep, deep mourning and grief. Bishop N.T. Wright is in the first rank of modern Christian theologians, along with Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, and perhaps a handful of others. In Bishop's Wright book on the Acts of the Apostles, Wright focuses an extended section on the stoning of Stephen. This great English theologian quotes Francis Thompson, who was, quote, a strange and powerful English poet of the earliest 20th century. He was, writes Wright, a believing Christian, but his life had been sad and difficult in a number of ways. And the poem he quoted, he continued on, yet in the middle of his suffering he discovered a strange truth, which he put into memorable verse. At the very moment when all seems most worst and bleak, just then the presence of Jesus Christ and of his angels can be so real and powerful that it is though some scenes from the Gospels are coming true before your very eyes. Since Thompson lived in London, Wright continued, that is where he placed his remarkable vision. And then Tom Wright quotes Francis Thompson, quote, but when so sad thou canst not sadder cry, and upon thy so sore loss shall shine the traffic of Jacob's ladder, pitched betwixt heaven and charing cross. Yea, in the night, my soul, my daughter, cry, clinging to heaven by the hems, and lo, Christ walking on the water, not of Gennesaret, but of the Thames. This goes in my mind, Wright continues, with the reflection that sometimes in the Bible, when angels appear, it is precisely to people who are beside themselves with grief, like Mary at the tomb of Jesus in John chapter 20. This isn't a reason, of course, for seeking out misery, but it might help a bit in understanding this dramatic passage of the story of Stephen, the first Christian martyr. There have been many martyrs during the last few centuries of Jewish history, before the time of Jesus. About 200 years before the Jesus' day, a pagan king from Syria took over Jerusalem, desecrated the temple, forced many Jews to renounce their laws, their ancestral way of life, and even to eat pork, which was, of course, forbidden in the law. The aim was obvious, Wright continues, get the Jews to renounce their national charter, and they will be easier to govern, less likely to rebel. But many Jews resisted in their vivid accounts of how they met their deaths. We are told in particular of what they said. One after the other, the most striking account is in 2 Maccabees chapter 7, they not only bear witness to their own faith, particularly in the resurrection they believe they will enjoy on the last day, they also threaten their torturer with dire punishments to come. Quote, do not think, says one, that God has forsaken our people. Keep on and see how his mighty power will torture you and your descendants. Wright continues, this is utterly typical of many Jewish stories of people being tortured and killed for their belief and way of life. Now, Hugh Hewitt. Grief should not express itself in anger or threats this weekend. Many millions will watch all or part of the memorial service for Charlie. It is the last great turning point conference he will have convened. People who knew Charlie far, far more closely than I did are free to disagree, but I believe his wish would have been that this gathering be completely peaceful, though somber and grief-filled, alive with Christian witness and celebration of life, free of the disease anger that consumed his assassin, honoring of Charlie's wife, children, family, and his work, hope-filled, resilient, and optimistic, as Charlie seemed always to be. I recommend N.T. Wright on anything. There's another book, and maybe someone will help me. There's a very famous Christian author who mostly writes fiction, but he wrote a small book on the Acts. I can't remember his name, and I can't, therefore, find the book to get the Audible book. I think the Acts is one of the great books of the Christian Testament. It's fabulous. And N.T. Wright's explication of it is fabulous. I'm going to have to call up Mark Roberts or Archbishop Hugh and find out who's the great Christian guy who wrote about Acts. Maybe, I don't know if Ratzinger did. If Pope Benedict did, I'll read that too. But I find, now, Fetching Mrs. Hewitt hates noise. If I want to listen to something to turn off the brain, which is what I do when the brain is racing, go to something completely different. Don't read politics. Listen to Will Durant. I've been listening to memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant, which are grand, but they're getting long. And so I switched up to N.T. Wright last night, and it was perfect. And sometimes you get blessed when you wake up in the morning if you forgot to turn it off. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt hates that. She hates noise. So I put an earphone in and listen that way. And that works because it usually takes about 30 minutes. It's why white noise machines, by the way, are useful with infants, is that no interruption. And white noise with content is best for seniors. And I wish I'd discovered it at 40, because I'm always difficult to slow the mind down. And if you're one of those people, my suggestion, N.T. Wright, The Acts of the Apostles, not because it's boring, because it is so different from whatever else you were thinking about. Ditto Will Durant and The Age of Napoleon. About The Age of Napoleon, which I had also listened to last night first, and I decided I'm too interested in this. I got to turn this off. He talked about people who are obliged to live in periods of concentrated history, like the French between 1789 and 1815. They get a century's worth of history in 25 or 30 years. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be Chinese under Mao. You don't want to be a Russian under Lenin and Stalin. Americans generally, because the Constitution endures, have been spared that. So that's my recommendation for your weekend. N.T. Wright, The Acts of the Apostles, audiobook. I'll be right back.